In 1929, the American stock market collapsed in a single day. Banks closed, businesses shuttered, 25% of the workforce lost their jobs overnight. Families who had money on Monday were standing in bread lines by Friday. And yet, the generation that survived it went on to build more generational wealth than any generation before or after them. Not because the economy recovered, it took over a decade to recover, but because the psychological experience of losing everything permanently rewired how that generation thought about money. They developed a set of mental habits, a money mindset that is almost completely extinct today. And the timing could not be more important, because right now, economists are using the words wealth transfer and Great Depression in the same sentence again. And the people who understand the psychology of what happened last time will be the ones who come out of this one ahead. The first mindset shift was what psychologists call present bias reversal. Your brain, by default, is wired to prefer rewards now over rewards later. A dollar today feels more valuable than a dollar tomorrow. This is called present bias, and it is one of the most studied phenomena in behavioral economics. It is why people overspend, undersave, and keep saying they will start investing next month. The Great Depression generation had this bias forcibly removed. When you have watched your savings disappear overnight, when you have seen your neighbors lose everything they assumed was permanent, your brain recalibrates. The future stops feeling abstract. It stops feeling like someone else's problem. It becomes as urgent and as real as today. People who lived through the Depression did not save because they were disciplined. They saved because their nervous system had been permanently reprogrammed by the experience of loss. The future self stopped being a stranger. It became the person they were terrified of becoming. Today, without that experience to reprogram us, we default back to present bias. We spend now and assume future you will figure it out. That assumption is exactly what the Depression generation learned never to make. The second mindset was a concept economists call anti-fragility, though the Depression generation did not have a name for it. They just lived it. Anti-fragility means building systems that get stronger under pressure rather than breaking, and the Depression generation did this instinctively across every area of their financial lives. They never had one income stream. They grew food. They repaired things instead of replacing them. They built skills that could generate income in multiple ways. They held physical assets, land, tools, gold, because they had watched paper assets vanish overnight. Today, the average American household has less than 1 month of emergency savings, one missed paycheck away from financial crisis. That is not just a savings problem. That is a psychological problem. It is the result of decades of economic stability that has made fragility feel normal. The Depression generation was anti-fragile not because they were smarter, but because they had learned the hard way that any single point of financial failure could destroy everything. So they built redundancy into every system, multiple income sources, owned assets, skills that could never be taken from them. That mindset did not disappear when the Depression ended. It got passed down. It became the foundation of the greatest wealth-building era in American history, the post-war economic boom. And it started with the psychological rewiring that came from surviving catastrophic loss. The third mindset was the most powerful, and it is the one most completely absent from modern financial culture. It is the distinction between want and need. This sounds simple. It is not, because the line between want and need is not logical, it is psychological. And in modern consumer society, that line has been systematically and deliberately erased. The average American in 2026 has a monthly subscription to a streaming service, a gym they rarely visit, a phone plan with data they do not use, and a closet of clothes worn twice. None of these feel like luxuries. They feel like necessities because the psychological baseline, the internal standard of what normal life requires, has been inflated by decades of advertising, social media, and consumer culture. The Depression generation had a completely different baseline. Normal meant having food, having shelter, having heat in winter. Anything beyond that was abundance. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation. The brain rapidly adjusts to new levels of comfort and redefines them as the minimum acceptable standard. What felt like luxury in 1930, a new pair of shoes, felt like a basic need by 1960. What felt like luxury in 1980 feels like a basic right in 2026. The Depression generation never adopted. The experience of genuine scarcity set a baseline that could not be erased by prosperity. And that baseline, that deeply embedded sense of what was truly necessary versus what was merely desired, is what allowed them to save at rates that are almost incomprehensible by modern standards. So why does any of this matter today? Because right now, the same conditions that preceded the Great Depression are present again. Record levels of consumer debt, a stock market priced at historic highs against weakening economic fundamentals, a wealth gap wider than any time since 1929, and increasing numbers of economists warning that what is coming next will not look like a normal recession. You cannot manufacture the psychological rewiring that comes from surviving a depression, but you can choose to apply its lessons before you are forced to learn them the hard way. Here is what that looks like practically. Build present bias reversal deliberately. Automate your savings so that the decision happens before your brain can choose present over future. Make the future version of yourself as real and vivid as possible. Name them, picture them, because the brain saves for a person it can see. Build anti-fragility into your finances. One income stream is fragile. Build a second. Keep 3 to 6 months of expenses in cash. Own assets that hold value independently of financial markets, and reset your baseline. Go through your monthly expenses and ask not, is this nice to have, but would my life actually fall apart without this? The answer, most of the time, is no. The generation that survived the Depression did not just endure hard times, they were forged by them into something more durable, more resourceful, and more financially capable than anything that came after. You do not have to wait for a depression to adopt their mindset. But if the economists are right about what is coming, the people who adopt it now will be the ones standing when it is over. Subscribe if this changed how you think about money. Every week we go deeper into the psychology behind financial decisions, not the rules, but the mindset behind why some people build wealth while others watch it disappear. See you next week.